There's no shortage of controversy when it comes to nutrition, but there are also plenty of areas where there isn't any controversy and it's pretty clear what we should be doing. And the first three I want to talk about are eating real foods, making them plant-based, and eating in a Mediterranean style. So the first is real foods, food that comes from the ground, from a plant, food that comes from animals, not food that comes from a package or an industrialized plant, and not food that's full of chemicals. This makes a tremendous difference in our health. Our bodies have evolved over thousands of years to eat real food. It's no surprise that the incidence of inflammatory diseases and chronic diseases, obesity, have continued to rise, as has our intake of packaged and processed food. The low-fat craze that started in the 60s and 70s and took off in the 80s and 90s was associated with a concurrent rise in the amount of healthy snack foods, healthy low-fat snack foods. And that increased our consumption of Snackwells and low-fat cookies and crackers and processed foods. That's not real food. We can reverse that. We can get back to the real foods and improve our health. Remember that real food shouldn't have ingredients. It should be an ingredient. If it's from the ground, if it's from an animal, it's its own ingredient and it doesn't need any more. So let's talk about some specifics. Let's talk about breakfast. What's an easy swap you can do for breakfast? Well, unfortunately, traditional American breakfast has been cereal, bagels, muffins. None of those are real food. But what if you had leftover veggies with an egg, little sprinkling of cheese? That's real food. That's got all the macronutrients you need. It's going to keep you full, it's going to energize you, and it's going to improve your health. Focusing on the real food doesn't have to be hard. Apples, berries, with some paleo granola even. That's a much better approach than the traditional starchy, processed breakfast. Focus on the real food. Snacks are another big one. That's where the majority of these packaged, processed, previously thought of as healthy snacks come into play. The chips, the crackers, the cookies, the pretzels. What are real food snacks? It's not that hard. An apple with some nut butter, celery, carrot sticks, nuts. All of those things are so easy to transport, so easy to have available, and make for healthy, nourishing, and filling snacks that you can have at a moment's notice. But if we don't plan ahead and we don't have them available to us, we're going to grab whatever is available. I hate to admit it, but every time I walk into the doctor's lounge in the hospital, what do I see? I see donuts, I see bagels, I see muffins, I see boxes and boxes of cereal. Fortunately, I'm also starting to see some apples and oranges, but I wish I saw so much more. I wish I saw healthy nuts available. I wish I saw carrot sticks and celery, and saw less of the processed, packaged junk food that serves as our snacks. And then of course there's dessert. I've already talked about the societal norm of why we think we have to have dessert at every get-together, every social activity, every party. We have to get away from that. But if you are going to have dessert, why not have berries? They're just as sweet. They've got plenty of natural sugar that's going to satisfy your sweet tooth. Yogurt and berries, as opposed to the cookies and crackers and ice cream, it's a fantastic substitute. Do you have to do it every day? Of course not. You can still save that sweet treat, but it's gotta be a treat. It's not what you do every day. It's not part of your life. If you need the substitute, you go for the blueberries, the strawberries, the peaches. You eat the fruit that's in season, that's local, that's fresh, and that satisfies your sweet tooth and is a perfectly healthy dessert. Those are some simple swaps you can make to focus on real food, get away from the processed foods, and that's a huge step you can make to improving your health. The next concept is making our meals veggie-based. Now here's another study to tell you about. A study looking at the amount of vegetables in our meals showed that only 40% of the average American meal has vegetables at all, 40%. And of those, most of them are relegated to a small side portion. So it's clear when we talk about making our meals veggie-based, there's a lot of cultural norms that we have to go against. But it's very simple. When you look at your plate, do you see mostly vegetables Or do you see mostly other things? We have to change the way we eat. So when we look at our plate, 50% or more are vegetables. And it's not just me saying that. Science has shown time and time again, the more vegetables we eat, the less risk of diabetes, heart disease, strokes, cancer, and more. And the more colors, the better. Think about it. This is nature's medicine. This is food from the earth. The more variety of colors, the more phytochemicals, the more nutrients, the more antioxidants. These are all substances that have been proven to be beneficial to our health. And it's so easy and so available. So why wouldn't we do it? Well, again, it's the way our society has evolved and our nutrition has evolved. So we have to undo that and go back to the vegetable based, the hunter and the gatherer type of way of eating. It may not be popular now, but when you think about nourishing your body and what you're eating as nourishing your body, vegetables are the #1 way to do it. So here's some simple tips. 1 or 2 days a week, just make a ton of vegetables, more than you're gonna need for the next 2 or 3 days. You get them steaming on the stovetop. You get them roasting in the oven. You even can saute a couple in a little avocado oil and a little seasoning. So you have a variety of different vegetables. You put all your leftovers in a glass container in the front of the fridge. And now some of these may seem like details, but they're very important. Glass container, so you can see through it, you can see exactly what it is, you know it's the vegetables. Front of the fridge, so when you open the fridge door, it's the first thing you see. That way, if you come home for dinner, you don't have a lot of time to prepare, and you may have just a little side portion, a little piece of protein, you go into your fridge, you see your glass container of veggies, you add them to the meal, and all of a sudden you've got your veggie-based meal. It's simple, and it's easy, and it works. So implement that tip today and see how many more veggies you're gonna eat over the next week. Be sure to check out our bonus video where I show you exactly how to make this. And I show you how easy it is, that anybody can do it, and it really will help you increase the amount of veggies you eat, and in the process, improve your health. The next concept to discuss is eating in a Mediterranean style. Now you've probably heard that term, and it can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. The way I want to talk about it, though, is specifically how it relates to a study that was done called the PREDIMED study. So let me tell you a little bit about this. This was a randomized trial where they looked at over 7,000 people, and a third of them ate a low-fat, low-processed food diet. A third of them ate what was the Mediterranean diet with extra virgin olive oil, and a third of them ate the Mediterranean diet with extra nuts. So first let's define what the Mediterranean diet was. It was fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, lean proteins like chicken, extra virgin olive oil, a handful of nuts, and it avoided the red meats, it avoided the processed foods, the sugars, the baked goods, the sweets. So right away you can see it's going to be a pretty healthy diet. But what's interesting is they compared it to a low-fat diet that was also low in sugars, in processed foods, in baked goods. Now here's the interesting part. If I was designing a study and I wanted to show the benefits of one way of eating, I'd compare it to a really unhealthy way of eating. That way, you're pretty sure you're going to see your benefits. Instead, they compared it to actually a pretty good way of eating. The so-called controlled diet was already better than the standard American diet because it was low in processed foods and low in the junk foods. But what did they find? Well, they found a 3% reduction in the risk of heart attacks and strokes. And that was statistically significant. That's amazing. Let's think about that again. Just changing the way they ate from an already fairly healthy diet to focusing more on fresh fruits and vegetables, olive oil, nuts, adequate proportions of grains, which means the smaller proportions of grains, not these huge bowls, but pasta and breakfast cereals in small proportions. They found a reduction in heart attacks and strokes. That's pretty powerful. So some of the important concepts of this way of eating: it was real food, it was vegetable based, it was low in the processed foods and junk foods, and it was 40% fat. That goes against all these decades of saying we need low-fat diets. And the majority of the fat came from a liter of extra virgin olive oil per week, 30 grams of nuts per day, plus avocados and lots of fish, lots of the omega-3s from the fish that they ate. So 40% fat diet still reduced the risk of heart attacks and strokes. This was a fantastic trial. One, it was a randomized trial. It was not an observational trial. So it's pretty clear that it was the change in the dietary patterns that made the difference. The other thing is they weren't measuring surrogate outcomes. And what I mean by that, it wasn't just blood pressure, cholesterol, it wasn't those measurements. It was an actual hard clinical outcome like strokes and heart attacks. That's what we want to prevent. And the simple dietary change was able to prevent it. One thing that I think is important to point out is how we evaluate the benefit. So a 3% risk reduction over 5 years. You can compare that to some of the trials of medications like statins. To reduce a heart attack with statins, some studies have shown a 1.5% reduction over 5 years. Does that mean that the Mediterranean diet is more powerful than statins? Well, technically you can't say that because there were different studies with different groups. But just looking at it that way shows the power that nutrition can have. And it shows how important it is that we choose food that nourishes our body and improves our health. So in summary, the Mediterranean way of eating, focusing on fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, healthy fats with the nuts, the avocados, the olive oils, the fish, can reduce your risk of heart attacks and strokes. So the 3 main topics we talked about, eating real foods, making it vegetable-based, and eating in a Mediterranean style. If you just did those 3 things, you're doing the overwhelming majority of what you need to do for reframing how you see your food, nourishing your body, and using food as your medicine to improve your health.